All right, we're diving into the first of the steering boxes. This is the quicker ratio box. This should be the power steering version. And as noted before, these are not actually an integral power steering. There's no fittings for any of that. This is a Ram style system on these cars like early Mustangs have. So this does not have any liquid going through it, just grease in here. And you can see just how lovely this stuff is. It smells fantastic. I did find out that the shaft is bent, so that's a problem right off the bat with this box. And this one seems a little tight, so I'm just going to clean it out and then see what we've got, see if this is even worth using. The other box I have over there on the floor is a manual steering box, and that one is nice and loose. So worst case scenario, we'll put that one in, but I'm going to try to see if I can maybe salvage this thing here. But see what we have before we go to the trouble of taking the original out of the car. Well, hopefully you can see that, but that's a big pool of water down in there. So I have two steering boxes, as you noticed from prior videos. One is a power steering box, which is also called the quick ratio box. And the other one is just another duplicate of what we have here. So I took them apart because I wanted to see the condition they were in. And also because after talking with the steering box guru that I found on the internet, and I'll try to put the link to his page down below, I thought I was going to just rebuild these myself because I didn't think it would be that difficult. And I don't think it would be with the right tools, but after a very wonderful conversation with him on the phone, I decided that I would not tackle this myself. I think that having a specialist look at it is probably the better way to go. However, with the current steering box now acting like it should, I'm not as concerned as I used to be. He pretty much talked me out of doing the quick ratio box, which is this one here. Saying that if I'm not going to add power steering, I'm probably going to be really sorry, and one of my things that I'm probably going to do is put a slightly smaller steering wheel on it, which isn't going to help anything. So I doubt I'm going to use this. But this box, turns out, is actually in pretty good shape. So this part and the worm gear in the box itself, back there, are both fine. This shaft showed a fair amount of wobble in it, but he advised me that that actually is not unusual, and they don't just bend. That's actually probably from the manufacturing process, because this is actually two pieces welded together. So Ford didn't always get them exactly straight. So that may not actually be bad, and that quick ratio box could probably live again, because all of the gear portions here look very good, and they're not rusty. Now, the other one, the duplicate to the one that's in the car, is this one here. And as you can see, it's got a lot of damage on it from rust. It's got pits and everything in there. And this one's probably not a candidate to be rebuilt, would be my guess, without sending it out to him. So this is, wall art now, probably. I don't know what the one in the box looks like. The one in the car. One of the things that happens to these is they do not have a seal here at the top where the shaft goes in. And typically through driving, you're not going to get water going down in there, but when you wash the car, or if it gets submerged in any kind of water, then water is going to get in here. Or if it's stored with the hood off or something outside. And that's when problems start. So once the water gets in there, it usually doesn't leave. It just pools in the bottom, and guess what? That's exactly where that thing resides, along with a bearing. So most of these boxes you take apart, you're going to find they've got some water in them. My quick ratio box had water in it that I poured out. Fortunately, it had only been in there recently, I think, once the car was parted out. This one, however, even though no water came out, it obviously had some in there for quite a while. And that's what caused all that damage to the shaft. So these are, if you wash your car or anything under the hood, it's always a good idea to cover this with baggie or something to try to keep any water from getting in there. Also, be sure to grease them. Make sure they're full of grease and follow the instructions on that. They do not take gear oil. We covered that in an earlier video. But again, if you read this guy's website, which I'll link below, you'll learn all about these things. I'm now sort of a semi-expert on these steering gear boxes, more so than I ever wanted to be. But we're going to ignore that for now and just see how this one does. And continue on with some of the more cosmetic things and get in here and deal with, that. We got that going on. This side here I think is pretty good. We do have a hole here in the back, and I have to address that. And the other side is just as bad. I don't know if we can see it without light, but there's the wheelhouse. That's perforated, and then I think back here we've got some daylight poking through as well. Hey, Editing Dave here. I missed putting together something at the beginning of this video segment about the transmission. So the transmission got rebuilt and got put back in the car, and we took it for a test drive and found out that we had first and second gear, but no third. Would not shift in a third gear. And in trying to think about what may be causing this, I remembered that there was a piece that I thought was in reverse order according to the factory diagram when I took the transmission apart. If you look way back in the series, I think it'll be there. But at any rate, I figured that I did something amiss there and shouldn't have done what I did. So I wound up looking at the diagram and trying to figure it out again, and then made this following segment. Problem is, and those of you who have been following along with this since the beginning may remember that there was a question on the sequence that these parts went together, because the way I took them out was not in this order. So I assumed someone had been in there previously and managed to screw it up. However, if we go to this diagram, which had me thrown for a loop because it's actually upside down from the other one. The other side of this whole valve assembly is where that one is. See, this one's open. That one shows the top, so it's closed. And so these are all in reverse order, which is why I was confused and went, well, these are not the same as the other ones, so how could it possibly be this diagram? Well, apparently it is this diagram. And these show it in the reverse order of this one. So I think that is where my problem lies. And we'll take it apart and try to correct it, and hopefully that fixes it. Stay tuned. So, Editing Dave again. Took the valve body out and reversed those two parts and put it back together, and then I had only first gear. So it wasn't that. So then I had to drain it, take the valve body out again, and then try to figure out what was actually wrong with it. So we'll pick up here as I am draining the transmission fluid for the second time. Well, I'm becoming very adept at doing this task. This will be the third time I've drained this. So much fun. A guy should have probably put a drain in that pan by now. Well, back at this diagram yet again, and I found what the problem was. Originally I thought that I had reversed the sequence of this and this because they were installed reverse when I took the transmission apart. I can't remember if that is the case or not, but I switched these back and then only had first gear, so I knew that wasn't the problem. So took the valve body out again, reversed these, and figured I was back to the same place I was before, where I only had first and second gear. So it makes me think, okay, what else could possibly be wrong? Well, this is the 2-3 shift valve. That is right next to the one that I thought was wrong. And although the sequence of the parts was correct, when I took this cover off and took these out, this piston here, the throttle modulator valve, was in backwards. The long part was pointed down. Now, I don't know why that was the case. I'm pretty fastidious about keeping things in the proper order when I take them apart. But somehow, it was in backwards. And having taken that out, spun it around, put it back together, everything back in the car, now we have gears 1 through 3. Problem solved. So this thing shifts so smoothly, softly, that I almost can't tell when it happens. So I rigged up my my little test tachometer here. I don't use this in a car because it sticks. But we're going to run down the highway here. I wanted to see what RPMs it's turning on the highway because it seems like it spins awfully tall. But you'll be able to see the shifts happen here with the tach. There's first and a second. Second to third. That's going up a pretty big hill, so it's a little lazy. So we'll check back here in a second and see what kind of RPMs we're turning at 60 miles an hour. Alright, we're going downhill now. About 60 miles an hour here in the highway. And we're turning roughly 2,500 RPM, which seems like an awful lot to me, considering the rear axle ratio that this is supposed to be. I think it's like right around a 3.00. It might even be a little numerically lower than that, but I'm a little surprised. I would have thought we would have been closer to 2,200. It sounds like it's revving more than that in the car, but I guess that's okay. But it's not a car that really wants to do 65 to 70. It's not real happy about that. Not sure if it's pushing too much wind with its lack of aerodynamics or what, but just kind of a surprise that it's turning these kind of RPMs. We're going up a hill. Lost a little bit there. So 65, it's about 2,700 or so. I need to keep it on the road here. Got the heat turned on today. It's in the 40s, and it works pretty good. Really can't complain. But the rusted out cowl vent is letting fresh air come blowing in on the driver's side. So anything less than the mid 40s here, I think, would be a miserable drive, despite the fact that the heat's working as well as it is. Well, according to the door ID plate, this car has a axle code 2, which would make it a 283. I find that hard to believe, but I guess I have to because I'm looking right at it. Let's talk about the C4 trans rebuild. Can the average moron like me or somebody with some mechanical skills actually attack one of these transmissions and successfully rebuild it? And I use the term rebuild meaning the barest minimum of what it's going to take. So if you're trying to fix one that's got hopeless leaks like this one was, or it's, you know, worn out clutches like this one was, then I would say yes, if you have a decent command of tools and mechanical knowledge and you've been into engines or anything like that, the transmission isn't really going to be anything too difficult to tackle. It's just a matter of keeping your parts straight and in order, and then methodically going through and replacing all the seals and the clutch packs and so forth. It's actually very simple. Now, I do recommend that you get both the factory shop manual and the Haynes manual, as I talked about in the earlier videos. But once it's apart, it's not hard at all to do. You just have to go through and take some of the sub-assemblies apart, replace the seals, which are mostly just O-rings, and put it back together in the correct order. And it's fairly easy to do. the manuals will guide you through it, and it's not hard. Now, a lot of people, of course, are going to use YouTube videos as a way to maybe accomplish this. What I found with a lot of the YouTubers was that a lot of them are professional transmission guys, which obviously they have great knowledge. However, they also have a way, an ability to go through it and slam it together or take it apart and just throw the pieces around like there's nothing to it, because they've done it a million times. So I'm watching, professional guys take these transmissions apart and just throwing the parts in a pile, and that's not going to work for me because I don't know where all these pieces go. I haven't done it ever. So I had to do it very methodically and lay everything out on the table as you saw and do it that way. With that in mind, it's not that difficult. The worst part and the problems that I have were with the valve body. And that's because I took it apart to clean it, put it back together, and I put together the one valve or piston backwards, and totally on me. I thought it was that other thing we were talking about, pardon the fan, but it wound up not being that part I thought was reversed. So it was a lot of headache for nothing. But even then, it was mostly the headache of just draining the pan and taking the thing apart again. The valve body is accessible on the bottom of the transmission. You just take out 7 or 8 bolts, and there you go. And you can take it out and put it on the workbench. Now, would I do another one of these C4 green dots? Only if I was planning on keeping that in the car. The green dot, there's not really anything much made for it as far as improving the shift characteristics or the strength of it if you're going to be putting it behind a V8. I think this transmission probably won't make it to the V8 swap because of, first of all, the corny shift pattern that they have, but also because the valve body is very lazy with its shifting and that kind of thing. So I'm probably going to seek out another one that is a slightly later model, C4, that already has the V8 bell housing on it. If I can just get a decent one of those as a core and rebuild another one. I mean, it really isn't much other than taking some time, and the rebuild kit's like 150, 175 bucks. Not hard to do. So that and maybe an upgraded valve body, and I'm thinking it'll be fine for street use. So bottom line is, yes, it can be done by the average idiot, because I'm the average idiot and I did it, and it really wasn't that hard. Now, if you're talking a newer transmission, AODs or an E AOD, that's probably something I'd be a little bit more self-conscious about trying. But a C4, C6, C5, I'm not afraid. Not now. I figured I could make it worse, and I didn't. I made it better. And the thing's completely bone dry, doesn't leak at all. So if really all you're worried about is improving some, bad shifting, or if the clutches are going to be worn out, or your fluid's really brown and that kind of thing, and if the thing's leaking like crazy like this one was, then yes, you can certainly do it yourself. It doesn't require any special tools other than snap ring pliers, which aren't really special tools anymore. So yeah, I wouldn't be scared of it if I'm, a decent home mechanic. But you got to be able to lay it all out in an orderly fashion, antiseptically clean, and do it that way. So, thus concludes our C4 transmission rebuild attempt, and we had success. Alright, so that's going to do it for this installment of the Falcon Chronicles. And we've got a car now that we can get in and drive. It's amazing. We've got heat, we've got fluids that stay in the engine, we've got all the gears, and turn the key and it starts. It's a regular car finally. And it stops too, which is also remarkable. So all the systems are fixed and it's ready to go. So we'll be able to drive the car this year, in the condition that it's in cosmetically. Take it to a couple of shows maybe and what have you, but kind of where I wanted it to be at this point. In the meantime, I'll be looking for the V8 to rebuild and put in the car. I'm probably going to look for another transmission as well, just to swap it up to something a little bit more modern. And that's it. So for the winter months, we're just going to work on a little bit of the cosmetics and stuff. I may not have an installment here for a while. I also have to get back on the Royal Enfield motorcycle and fix the oil leaks on that. But that's it for now. As always, thank you for watching. Appreciate it. Be sure to check out all the other videos on this car if you're just coming here for the first time. And talk to you soon. Take care.